So next we're going to tighten up the spokes and true this rim. Now what I've done is I've made me a little temporary jig. I just took a piece of all thread and put it on either side of the wheel with a couple of nuts and some washers, tighten it all down, put it in the vise so I'd have a way to spin the wheel and true it. Of course, normally you would use a truing stand, but since this video is intended for the do-it-yourselfer, we're not going to have a stand. Now what you could also do, since I don't have the whole machine here, if you were doing this yourself to your own machine, the best way to do it would just be to take this wheel assembly right now, just put it back in the front of the bike, have the front of the bike jacked up, stick the axle in it, tighten it all down so you could spin it in the bike while you go through and tighten up the spokes. Alright, so now I'm going to zoom in here and show you a little more detail on these spokes where you can see the threads on them. Now you can see right there, there's our spoke nipple and you can see the threads on it. But what you also see is there's a hole in the wheel right here. Now that's where your valve stem goes through for your inner tube. But we're also going to use this as a point of reference, because as we start tightening these spokes down, you're going to want to go one full revolution, go through all 36 spokes, and then that way you'll come back to the same stopping point. So if you need to make any adjustments, you can kind of adjust it from there. But you always want to go one full round as you start tightening these down, so that way we'll get them tightened down to the same point. So what we're going to do is on this very first spoke here, is you want to run it down until you have approximately 2 threads showing. You can see right there, you got 2 threads. Now we're going to move up to the next one. We're going to do the same thing. Run that nipple down until you got about 2 threads showing. We're going to work our way all the way around this rim, all 36 spokes. And what this does is this helps draw all these down to an equal length, which keeps your rim true. You know, if we just went to tightening these things down at random, you know, you'd end up with a pretty lumpy rim. So just keep going all the way around until we get back to the valve stem hole. Now I've run all 36 spokes down to where we've got just 2 threads showing, but the wheel's still a little bit loose. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and run it up to where there's no thread showing, where the ends of the threads are just flush with the ends of the nipple. We'll go through all 36 spokes again. Now after making another round on these spokes, I've got some of them that's starting to snug up pretty good, but I've still got some that are loose. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to kind of go around, and any spokes that have any slack in the nipple, I'm just going to run them up until I just get all the slack out of them. Now the ones that are snug, I'm not going to pull on those anymore, because that's how you start pulling your wheel out of line. Basically all we want to do is we want to try to get all these spokes down to about the same tension. And then that way, as we start tightening the spokes up, it won't start pulling our wheel out of line. Now that I've got all the spokes kind of run up and got all the slack out of them to where they're all starting to kind of fall in snug, now I want to start truing this rim. And so what I did is I just took a little piece of wire and just wrapped it around the end of a vise and ran it out here close to the end of the rim and just kind of made me a simple pointer. See, I got a little air gap between it and the rim there. Now what I can do now is I can turn that wheel and see how much run out I have. Which that one's looking really good right there. Probably not going to have to mess with it too much. But now, say as you're snugging these spokes up, say if you have a spot where maybe you've got your pointer down there real close to the rim, say you've got a hump that's kind of running over to one side and it's maybe rubbing it, or it could be going in the opposite direction, it doesn't really matter. But say for instance, say if we had a spot right here in this area where the rim was running out this way. Now what you want to do is you want to tighten your spokes up on the opposite side to pull that wheel over a little bit. But now in order to do that, you're going to snug a few spokes up over on this side to pull it over, but you also want to loosen the corresponding spokes on the opposite side of the hub. So that way it will allow that rim to float over a little bit. And you may only want to do it in a section of say about 4 or 5 spokes at a time. Then you turn your wheel again and double check for your run out. Now same thing if you had run out this way. Say if you had a little hump in it, obviously you want to tighten the spokes down to pull that hump down. But when you do that, you also want to go back around 180 degrees and loosen off the corresponding spokes on the opposite side of the wheel so it kind of pulls the wheel over. That way, if you just go snugging them down trying to pull everything into true without backing the ones off on the opposite side, it's going to cause you to have spokes too tight, and it's really going to twist up your rim and have it full of knots. So Yeah, I've got this old wheel here pretty true, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna start working my way around with my spoke wrench. And I'm gonna go over here and find the valve stem hole right there. And what I'll do is I'll start there and I'll just make one little turn on each nipple. Now whether they're tight or not, that's not gonna matter at this point, because you wanna equally tighten all spokes all the way around. So I'm just gonna start at the one, just make one pull, go up to the next spoke, make a pull, and just work my way around. Now as I'm working my way around, if I run across a spoke that is already pretty snug, it's a little snugger than all the others, I'm just gonna stop right there. I'm not gonna tighten it anymore. I'm just gonna keep pulling loose spokes, go all the way around. And basically what you're trying to do is pull them all down to the same tension. Then after I make a round, I'll spin the wheel, check for the trueness on my little pointer here. I can adjust those a little bit if I need to, and then I'll go back another round with one more pull on the wrench, and I'll do that about 3 or 4 times until I have all the spokes pulled down to about as snug as I like them. And then I'll make a final spin, make sure everything's in true, make sure my rim's trued up, and at that point, we pretty much got her licked. All right. Well, I've made me about 4 or 5 rounds, just making one little turn at a time. And as I make my rounds and the spokes get tighter and tighter, you'll come across some that they feel like you don't really want to pull on them anymore. So at that point, I won't pull on those anymore. But any remaining spokes that I run across, I'll go ahead and pull them down one pull at a time until I keep getting them all down to the same tension. And then I'll just make a final pass, and any remaining spokes that aren't as tight as the rest of them, I'll go ahead and just give them another little pull and just work my way around. And right now, I've got my spokes about as tight as I want them. Man, I've got my run out down to just a little bit of nothing now. Something to keep in mind on these old spoke wheels, it's almost impossible to get them just 100% true. Usually if I can get them within a couple of millimeters as far as side to side and up and down run out, that's plenty good enough for what these old bikes are doing. But yeah, she's looking pretty good here. Now as far as my spoke tightness, probably a lot of people will say, well, what are you torquing the spokes to? Well, I don't really torque them. I just get them to where I feel a pretty good pull on them, and that's good enough. You don't want to over tighten them because you'll start pulling them through the hubs or actually just pulling the threads and stripping them. But at this point, I think we're pretty good shape, so we're gonna call her done. Well, alrighty guys, I guess that's gonna wrap up this episode of D-Ray Shop. Like I said, anytime a fella's looked at one of these wheels and you see all these spokes, you think, man, it'd be just impossible to get all that stuff put back together right. But you know what? It's not all that hard to do. If this old redneck can do it, I guarantee you can do it too. All right. Well, as always, appreciate y'all watching. Drop me some comments down in the comment section below. Y'all have a good one. We'll catch y'all next time around.